Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. Have a treat for you tonight. After taking a year off for the birth of his son last year, Sam is back to give us a preview of the Purdue Boilermakers. Sam, congratulations on the birth of your son, and how is he doing?
He's doing well. Never saw a Purdue football victory until this season. Had to wait a whole year, but there was obviously a lot of positives, but the downside was the one game I didn't get to see last year was Illinois and Purdue, which was a great football game. So having missed that and then come back and see Oregon shut out Purdue wasn't that great. But I watched it from afar, and Purdue feels they've got a shot. So that's all you can ask for. It's a rivalry game, and even though there's a lot of transfers, probably for Illinois, but definitely for Purdue, they put an emphasis on what it means to get that cannon, and they're going to have 2 weeks of preparation to get amped up for the Illini.
Yeah, and look, when it comes to rivalry games, you get that cliche, you throw the records out. But I will tell you, in my history of being almost 60, Illinois and Purdue, it seems like regardless of whether one team is good and the other isn't, is usually a pretty entertaining game. And it's very similar to the Illinois Northwestern games, which also you can get the upset bug going in that as well. So I really think this year this should be a game. And under Coach Odom, I don't think they're going to expect anything less than beating Illinois come Saturday.
Yeah, very much so. The last 2 seasons, I would say that Purdue's best performance has come against Illinois. Now, part of that was the coaching staff at Purdue had more intel, the players they were going against, than anybody else, and probably knew how to attack that defense better than anybody. But it was a situation where 2 years ago, Purdue ran up the score on the Illini, and then last year in a game that it felt like it was going to be the reverse, it comes down to a 2-point conversion that Illinois gets the stop, and that was kind of more of the traditional what you see when these two teams play is it's going to come down to the wire. And, it was very entertaining for Purdue to score late in that game. And I think 3 or 4 plays later, Illinois is kicking the field goal to force overtime.
Yeah, I didn't think it was entertaining, just for FYI.
Well, watching from home, I wasn't having to actually cover the game. So,
yep, exactly. So happy birthday to your son. That should be on Friday. So that means he'll be ready to rock and roll the next day. And I'm hoping that he has to wait another week to see a Purdue victory. So Illinois fans are looking at this game and they've seen Illinois play good halves. The offense played consistent throughout the USC game. The defense, not so much. They are looking to try to play 4 quarters in a row. When Illinois goes out there and Purdue's on offense, talk about the trigger man, because he had a field day against Illinois. He's caused problems for them, but talk a little bit about quarterback, and then we'll kind of highlight the rest of the offense.
Yeah, so Ryan Brown made his first career start last year against Illinois. Hudson Card, the starter at the time, had been banged up a little bit, and I think a lot of things worked in Purdue's favor. One, Illinois didn't know much about him. They hadn't seen any film on him. And 2, he told us today he didn't really go out there with, your typical game preparation, kind of a typical starting quarterback. He said he was going out there and just playing backyard football. And the stats reflect that. He had a bunch of rushing yards. He had almost 300 passing yards, kind of had his way with that Illini defense. And he's a much more polished quarterback now, which is good for Purdue, but also you don't get that kind of randomness of what he did a year ago. He's had a very good start. He's made some ill-advised throws, namely against USC. Purdue got down on the red zone 3 times that turned into interceptions. One of them, he was hit as he was throwing, and it was a 70-yard pick six by a defensive lineman who's almost 300 pounds or whatever. So that was fun, unless you're a Purdue fan. And then the other 2 were just bad throws that he tried to force something and ended up costing Purdue probably at least 9 points, but you would think more. And the way that game played out, the pick six ended up being huge because Purdue was in the game at that point. Purdue loses by 2 scores and really left a lot to be desired there. So that is the comparable opponent that Purdue has with Illinois right now. And Illinois had its turnover issues as well, but was able to overcome them. Purdue probably right now is not in a position where it's good enough to overcome mistakes like that and beat good teams. So I think if Purdue can play mistake free and Ryan Brown can be the quarterback that he's been in spurts this year. I thought he was really good at Notre Dame, for example, and do that for a full 4 quarters. This could be a shootout again.
Yeah, we're hoping to not see that. Of course, you go look at the running backs. You got Maccabee back there. Tell us a little bit about the Purdue running game and what Illinois can expect.
Yeah, and that was a thing that the past 2 seasons has really been a strength for Purdue. A couple years ago, Maccabee and Tyrone Tracy were in the backfield. Tyrone Tracy is now a starter for the New York Giants, so that was a good duo. And then last year, Reggie Love comes over from Illinois and joins that backfield and was kind of the running mate with Maccabee. For whatever reason, Purdue has not gotten the running game going this year. Even the game that Purdue rushed for a lot of yards against Southern Illinois, it wasn't a high average. So Purdue's really got to get the running game going to complement how good this passing attack has been this season. The offense, I think, overall has been phenomenal, especially considering that Purdue has struggled to run the ball. But Maccabee's a guy that's just kind of been a mainstay, was an accidental walk-on turn starter 3 years ago and ends up rushing for almost 1,000 yards. And now he's going to end up leaving Purdue as one of the program's all-time leading rushers. But he, whether it's just saying the right thing, I actually believe this. He says he would rather win than, chase records. So he had opportunities and offers to go elsewhere, probably more money on the table, but he's been loyal to Purdue, wants his engineering degree from Purdue, and he stuck it out for a 5th season. So you want to see the payoff for those guys that in this day and age, especially kind of stay loyal to a program when they have chances to go elsewhere.
Yeah, because you're right. I'm never going to blame somebody for going and making money when you look at approximately 3% of college players end up in the NFL. I can certainly understand if you can pick up $500,000 or $1 million or whatever it might be, that can be life-changing money. If I would have had that type of cash coming out of college, you have parts of your life you don't have to worry about that other people do. But I also can admire it when somebody says, "Hey, this is where I gave my commitment to, and I've enjoyed my time here, and therefore I want to spend the rest of it with the team." It's an admirable quality. When you take a look at the offensive line, the guys who are opening up the holes, the guys who are giving Brown time to throw, how did that offensive line stack up across the board, and how do you expect them to do against the Illini defense?
Well, they're going to have to be a lot better than they've been so far this season. I thought this would be possibly a strength this season. Through 4 games, it has not been. It's been probably the worst part of Purdue's offense is blocking, and it's not just the 5 offensive linemen. It's the running backs have struggled to pass protect and things of that sort too. Receivers, got to hold their own in the running game, and that's been a struggle sometimes. But I really expected more out of this offensive line. I think outside of the center, Braden Joyner, who was a all SEC freshman team selection last year at Auburn, he's done pretty well at center. But the other 4, if you look at the Pro Football Focus grades, they grade very low week in and week out. It's a unit that I think has a lot of talent. Maybe it's just getting together and working together well or whatever it is, but it just hasn't been there yet. And Purdue promises that that's something that was honed in on during an off week last week, where you get more time to kind of look in the mirror and be like, listen, what we're doing isn't working. We've got to do something else. So that is the one kind of thing that I think there's hope for Purdue fans is you've had 2 weeks to prepare for one opponent, and Illinois couldn't overlook USC by any means. So you hope to have an advantage there that you've had 2 weeks to prepare for an opponent that really probably just started Purdue prep today.
Yeah, and we're actually hoping that the Illini don't look past Purdue to the Ohio State Buckeyes next week. There's a lot of danger, and hopefully, as you said, there's transfers on both teams, but hopefully the guys who've been here will warn them that while Purdue may not be the top of the Big Ten right now, they tend to play their top Big Ten game against Illinois.
Yeah.
When you look at the passing game, who is going to be the primary targets, and what are their capabilities?
Well, unfortunately for Purdue and for George Burhan, the starting tight end, he's been up and down throughout his career. He's had a lot of injuries, and it felt like he finally was healthy and getting going, making some plays, and he gets hurt at Notre Dame 2 weeks ago. And I would not anticipate that he'll play this week. He was he was on the practice field today, but he was not out there practicing. He was on the sidelines doing sled work and stuff like that. So if he can't play, and I don't anticipate he will, that's a huge blow because he's their best pass catching tight end. The receiving core has been probably one of the bright spots that I didn't expect, because it was a lot of guys that either had been at Purdue and not done much the last couple of years, or transfers who were elsewhere and really didn't have a lot of numbers. If you look at what they did at Georgia or USC or some of the other schools that they were at, EJ Horton was at West Virginia for a minute. And I don't think there's anybody that's going to be like a go-to target that's going to go light you up for 100 yards consistently or anything like that. But that's maybe the danger in this passing attack, is each one of these receivers is capable of going out and having a 100-yard game. EJ Horton, Armad Branch had 101 yards on 3 catches in the season opener in his first real opportunity. Michael Jackson III, who started his career at USC, was at Georgia last year. And then the guy that's kind of breaking out right now is sophomore Nitro Tuggle, who's an Indiana kid and went to Georgia last year, played some special teams, only caught a handful of passes, and left that program to come back closer to home. And now he's got a touchdown, I think, against USC and Notre Dame, and becoming a relied upon target. So by committee, that's a pretty dangerous group, I think, there at receiver, but it's not like anybody that I think is going to go out and just have a field day on any given week.
Yeah, there's no Mekhi Lemons on this team because he was just a super handful for the Illini to deal with, and it seemed like the more pressure that Illinois put on Jaden Maivia and Lemon, the bigger plays they made. They were really. It was funny because you would see Maivia miss an easy open throw when he was in the backfield without pressure, and then you would see him with a guy hanging off of him, and he would manage to thread the needle through 3 people. And it was just a really interesting offense to put. Are there any deep threats on this team? Any burners that Purdue has out there that can stretch the field?
I would say Armad Branch. I mentioned the 3 catches for 101 yards in the season opener, and the first pass he caught was it was a skinny, it looked like a skinny post, and he just took it to the house with speed and then did a couple juke moves. He also caught a one-hander down the sideline where he actually had a DB draped all over him, but it was a deep ball that he caught with one hand going out of bounds. So that was impressive. But the problem is, I don't know how much time Purdue can give Ryan Brown to throw the ball. That's something you got to do too. And I think Purdue's done a great job the last couple of weeks of hiding, those weaknesses with quick passes or whatever it is. There's been some trick plays that have come up big. Purdue's scored a couple of touchdowns on trick plays with Ryan Brown picking up a lateral that was an awful play turned into a great thing against USC because the defensive player didn't know it was the lateral, and Ryan Brown had the savviness to pick it up and take off running with it. And then last week, Maccabee threw a touchdown pass to Ryan Brown. So Luke Altmaier is not the only receiving touchdown catcher quarterback in this game. So, yeah, Purdue's been creative. I think that is something that could continue 2 weeks in a row once the competition ramped up. The first 2 games, Ball State and Southern Illinois, I think everybody knew Purdue was going to win those games and win them going away, which it did. So now where the competition's been a little bit more even, or Purdue's been an underdog, you've seen Purdue kind of throw some things in there. And with an extra week of preparation, that wouldn't surprise me if Purdue had something else up its sleeve. But if you're just talking player on player, I think that Illinois' defense is probably a little bit better than Purdue's offense. But that said, Illinois' defense has looked suspect here the last couple of weeks too.
Yeah, I was going to say that the two tough weeks when you throw those two together. You don't like to put up more than 90 points in 2 games. How have you heard anything about the mood of practice? 2 weeks of practice. I'm sure the Purdue players are getting tired of hitting one another again and want to see somebody else. But have you heard other practices? Have they been spirited? Have the coaches positioned them positively? What have you heard?
So we got to watch all of fall camp, which is very unusual, and that was great. But you also know that these guys are getting amped up and competing for spots. And now you get to the point in the season where a lot of those spots are solidified. And we're not watching a lot of practice on Monday. We get to see some stuff, but it's not the super physical Wednesday, Thursday practices or Tuesday, Wednesday practices you might see. So, but yeah, these guys seem to be of the right mindset. I think Barry Odom being a head coach and a defensive coordinator as long as he has been, and then having a lot of guys who have played for him in the past or coached with him in the past, there's a good structure there. And I think that they know how to get guys fired up. They educate these players on the history of every program. Ryan Brown today was talking about how big the Illinois rivalry was and says something about all the way to the first matchup back in 1890. And we fact checked that. He's correct. But that's also the coaches being like, hey, this is who we're playing. This is why it matters. This is a series that goes all the way back then. We play for a cannon. It's a traveling trophy. It's a big deal. And they make these players understand the history of these rivalries, even an opponent like USC, where there hasn't been a whole lot of games between the two. And that kind of gives you something to fight for when you know there's a lot on the line, even if it's not a Big Ten championship or whatever it is. They make sure that each one of these games feels important in their own right.
That's fantastic. I love that when the kids get a chance to get in on that. Now we're going to go talk about the defense in just a second, but before we do that, one of the things that I want to talk to you about is what Delete Me can do for you. Delete Me makes it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough to make everyone vulnerable. Now, you hear the term data brokers. What do data brokers do? Well, your name, your contact information, your social security number, home address, heck, even information about your family members could be compiled by data brokers and then sold online. Have you ever been the victim of identity theft or had harassment or doxing? If you haven't, you might know somebody who has. Delete Me can help. Take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me. Now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go join deleteme.com/HIT and use promo code HIT at checkout. That's the only way to get 20% off. Go to join deleteme.com/HIT and enter code HIT at checkout. That's join deleteme.com/HIT, code HIT. So thank you to the folks at Delete Me. And certainly if you are looking for something to protect you online, Delete Me is the place to go look. Sam, when you're looking now at the defense, Illinois' offense has been other than the game against Indiana has been pretty good, and even against Indiana, under the pressure that Luke Altmaier was in, he didn't turn the ball over. Currently, he has no interceptions this year. Illinois had 2 fumbles against USC. In fairness, one of them was one that the announcers were like, "How can you possibly miss this?" When it went into the replay booth. The other one was certainly unfortunate, but Illinois has been relatively good at holding on to the ball. The offensive line has had its moments. The first half against Western Michigan wasn't stellar. The first half against Duke was a little bit alarming. And the whole game against our friends at Indiana was something we try not to remember it at all. What kind of defensive line does Purdue have, and what kind of pressure are they going to put on Illinois?
I asked defensive coordinator Mike Shear this morning about Luke Altmaier, and I said, you've seen a lot of different quarterbacks throughout your first 4 games, and Luke Altmaier is kind of all of those combined into one guy. And he said, yeah, he's a handful, and the best thing about him is just his smarts and the way he gets Illinois in the right position to make successful plays. So he's well aware of Luke Altmaier and the success that he's had, and that Indiana game maybe was an outlier more than a detriment to what Illinois is. But regarding the defensive line, it's another place where, unfortunately, one of the best players is now out for the year, and TJ Lindsey is a transfer from Auburn, had done pretty well. He's a big body in the interior of that defensive line, and he tore his ACL against USC, so he's done for the year. But I think that Purdue is kind of starting to generate a little bit more of a pass rush with They have a player named CJ Nunnally, who was a two-time first-team All-MAC player, came to Purdue this year to see if that translated to a higher level of football, and he's got a couple sacks, and he's now starting for the team. He wasn't starting initially, and I think that's a good sign because Purdue realized we've got to get more pressure on the quarterback or we're going to be in trouble, and that's a guy that can certainly do it. CJ Madden is on the other end, and he's a guy from Georgia who was supposed to be a big part of this thing and the defense that Ryan Walters ran last year, but unfortunately he got hurt the third game of the year and never returned, and now he's back. And so far the numbers probably haven't been there, but you've seen the possible making ability that he has certain times. So as of now, it's been situations where teams have just hit a lot of big plays over the top, and that's probably going to go into your next question about linebackers and secondary. And that's where Purdue has struggled on defense, really is covering players. Did a good job of dropping 8 against USC, and then USC just was able to run the ball. So it's kind of like pick your poison, but whichever one you choose, you end up giving something else away. And Notre Dame had no trouble moving the ball, scored 56 points. Purdue hasn't forced a punt in 2 straight games. So there's a lot to be desired in terms of that defense.
Yeah. Any standouts or anybody at linebacker that Illinois fans should pay particular attention to out there?
I think the linebackers are pretty good. They're both transfers from UNLV. Barry Odom brought them over for a specific reason. Charles Correa and Manny Powell, and they've both had their moments. They've had some times where they haven't looked very good too. But I think that the tandem of those two guys can be very good. And I think the safeties have been pretty well for what they are. They use them in a lot of different ways. Miles Slesher is a guy who was at Colorado, then took a year off of football. He's had some good moments. He had a strip sack against Notre Dame that at the time looked pivotal because it was still a game late in the second quarter there when that happened, and Purdue was able to capitalize and score on that. And they have a player named Smiley Bradford who's a returner from last year, and he's had some big moments. They have a safety from BYU named Crew Wakely who doesn't start, but when he comes in, there's a different physical presence about that defense and the way that he kind of lays the lumber on people. But right now, the last 2 games, 33 points, 56 points. It's tough to win when you're giving up that many points. You're asking your offense to almost be perfect. And like I mentioned, Purdue had 3 interceptions against USC, or possibly that game's different. But Purdue went on the road and scored 30 at Notre Dame, which you feel like that should give you a chance to win the game, and Purdue loses by 4 scores.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say that the score looks better than what maybe I would have expected from Purdue in that Notre Dame game. How do you think the defensive backfield matches up against Illinois with Hank Beatty, Colin Dixon, and those guys?
They're going to have to change some things up because based on what I've seen so far this year, Purdue is going to struggle to cover those guys. Even Southern Illinois marched down the field on its first 2 series against Purdue, and the quarterback at Southern Illinois is really, really good and probably going to make a lot of money somewhere at a higher level next year. But they marched right down the field through the air and put 14 points on the board in no time. Now, after that, Purdue was able to shut them down, and that was just a matter of probably better players on the field taking control of that game. But since that day, USC's put up a lot of yards. Notre Dame put up a ton of yards, and like I mentioned, nobody's punted yet in the last 2 games. So first things first, Purdue's got to force a team off the field. Now, there were some 4th down conversions that teams didn't get. USC missed a field goal, things of that sort. But you still got to keep the teams behind the sticks, and Purdue has really struggled to do that so far. So even when Purdue got USC into 4th down situations, I think USC went 4 of 4 or 5 of 5 on 4th down because it was 4th and 1 or 4th and 2. And it's like, you're going to go for that most of the time, especially if you feel like you have an advantage. And, if that didn't get shored up, it could be a long day, or it could maybe be 50-49 like it was last year.
Yeah, I was going to say it. If you look since 2019, Illinois only beat Purdue once, even though they've been favored the majority of the time. So you don't know what's going to happen with these 2 teams. It seems like, the logical thing is Illinois should win this, but I just don't think Purdue sometimes is going to be that amenable to that. And I think they should be a nicer host. And allow the Illini to win this in flying some colors and some style. Special teams. We don't obviously we haven't seen a lot from the Purdue punt return team. How are they doing on returning kickoffs? Because it does seem like they've had some opportunities to do that.
The kickoff return has been okay, I guess. It hasn't hurt Purdue, but I think special teams, if this is a close game, could be where Purdue has an edge. And it really, talking to other reporters who cover Purdue early in the year, we kind of said, some of these games that are toss-ups, Rutgers, Northwestern, teams like that, maybe that's where Purdue does have an edge, is special teams. The special teams coordinator is James Shebus. He's twice been the National Special Teams Coordinator of the Year. He was with Barry Odom last year at UNLV, and Purdue paid him a lot of money to be a special teams coordinator, probably comparative to what other special teams coaches make. So you would hope that you have something going on there. And so far, Spencer Porath, the sophomore kicker who had some struggles last year, is 7 of 7 on field goals, perfect on extra points, has been a big piece of this thing. And Jack McAllister, who was Washington's punter previously, went to Nebraska in the spring. Nebraska was going to do rugby punting. So, sorry that you're not a rugby punter. You just don't fit our style. So he ends up at Purdue. And he's been probably the 2 best punters in the Big Ten this season. Also faked a punt against Notre Dame and got 10 yards out of it. So that's kind of James Sheba's specialty. If you go back and look at his time at Virginia Tech, UNLV, elsewhere, he takes advantage when he feels like you can fake a punt or a field goal or something like that and pick up a big first down. So if it does come down to a tight game, I think that could be an edge for Purdue. But that is probably the most promising thing about the Boilermakers so far this season. I would say, the punter and kicker have probably been candidates for team MVP so far.
Okay, that's not the way you like it, but boy,
it was also probably Purdue's best player last year, but it was for a completely different reason because Purdue was punting every 3 downs.
Yes, and he did suffer a punt block against Indiana, but the crazy thing was I can't really blame a punter when Indiana lines up 10 guys and Illinois decides that we don't need to block one of them. Made it very hard on him. So as you look at this game, how do you have a prediction? That's first question. And then how do you see this game unfolding for if you were going to have to predict it?
I think this game will be closer than a lot of people think. And like you said, this always seems to be a game that's tight. And as you mentioned, there were years where Purdue was bad and competed with Illinois. There were years before that when Illinois wasn't very good and was competitive against, some bowl eligible Purdue teams. So it's always going to kind of come down to the wire, probably. I think that Illinois just has probably a bit more talent right now. So I would give Illinois a 3-point or a 7-point edge or whatever it is. But you would think that Purdue will be kind of inspired with this being maybe a make or break week for them. You're 2-2, you've lost your last 2 games. You had a bye week going into this. And, if you can beat a top 25 team, you start to wonder who can't you beat moving forward when you face down the road, Minnesota the week after that, Northwestern the week after that, games that are probably more comparable talent-wise to Purdue. And it won't surprise me either way. I just think that Illinois has more at stake with probably needing to win almost all of its games, definitely this game, to stay in contention for one of those playoff spots.
And so, if people want to read your stuff, Sam, want to kind of see what you're doing, if they've enjoyed this podcast, just where can we look for you?
Yeah, all my stuff is on jconline.com. It also ends up on indystar.com with Nathan Baird, who's my colleague there, and his stuff likewise ends up on our website. It's the same company, owns both newspapers. So I'll have stuff later this week on kind of what Barry Odom said today about Illinois and how Purdue treated the bye week. I'll have some other stuff, kind of a scouting report later this week, a profile on Purdue receiver E.J. Horton, who's been starting as of late. And up until this year, I think his career high was 10 catches in a season. So this is his first real opportunity, and he's taken advantage of it. And if you follow me on the platform, I guess formerly known as Twitter, on X, I post all my links there. It's at Samuel T. King.
Perfect. Perfect. So, folks, you know exactly where to find Sam's stuff. He always does a great job of giving us a thorough understanding of the Purdue team coming in. We're hoping that maybe this year Illinois can squeeze out a little bit bigger victory. Of course, if you've enjoyed this, you can go to IlliniGuys.com. You can subscribe there for only 27 cents a day. You'll get all the stuff that's behind the paywall. So you'll get all of my stuff, Larry's stuff, but more importantly, you get Brad Sturdy, Kedrick Prince, Matt Stevens. And the greatest thing about it is we have our game room, which is one of the most emotionally volatile places because you can watch people and talk to people as the game unfolds. So when the Illini fumble, you can feel the emotional gut wrench from all the different fans who are on there talking and trying to describe how they feel, which is usually not good. And you also get the message boards where you go from just reading what we have to say or just listening to us to be able to go back and forth as to why did you say that? What did you mean by it? So that's why IlliniGuys.com is a great place to be. And of course, you can go to our YouTube station or channel and you can get all of our videos there. IlliniGuys.com. Please, if you're listening to this or you're watching it, giving us a 5-star review, liking what we do, and subscribing gives us a huge boost. We appreciate each and every one. And of course, if you can share our stuff on your social media, that is the best way for us to grow because college football fans tend to know other college football fans, and that is a great place for us to build more market share. So, Sam, thank you so much for coming on. And of course, until next time, folks, go Illini.